Okay, end of summer, try to get the sun where you can, but don't just step out into like that midday sun. You're gonna burn. That's the worst thing that can happen. But try to get like the early morning, low level sun, sunrise and sunset if you can. I know it's antithetical to the gamer lifestyle, but from what I read, I really think we're like killing ourselves with the blue light after dark, just like breaking down your brain. So it really is fun to like have the all-nighters, and those are some of my like favorite memories, is to like have blasting music and playing games really late into night. But you gotta take care of yourself a little better than that. Okay, Baldur's Gate 3. I finished last night. 150 hours full playthrough. That's me going everywhere, going through everything, clicking everything, checking every corner. I can't say that's like really the way to play. That's the way I wanted to do it for a first comprehensive run. But when you play the game, choose your character, start with like a custom character, try to figure out, maybe do a little research beforehand, which origin characters, like the companion characters you want to go with you, just to make like a nice well-balanced party. Try to get cloth armor, light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, so that anything that comes in, you get something. So that at least somebody can use all the things you get. And just run through it, try to figure out what your character would do. Wander off the beaten path, sure, but don't feel the need to do everything. You might end up over leveled, and it'll just kind of make the game a little bit less challenging, for sure. If you're the type of person who goes through a lot of games and tries them and then kind of goes off them, gets a little bit excited, bounces from game to game, this is not the game for you. Like, this is a game with patience. This is where you want to explore the corners. This is an impossibly rich world. It is bigger and more detailed. They put the kind of like work into this that you can't imagine, honestly. And you want to take your time with this one and feel like the love and the richness that's out there. So I think that's the best way to do it, if you ask me. I picked a Dragonborn monk. He's kind of like the de-escalator, you know what I mean? He's not trying to talk his way out of battle. He's going to punch some people down. But we're not all about the mind flayers. We're not all about the sci-fi stuff. No one's trying to be a demigod in my party. We're trying to like cut people down and get through all this, you know what I mean? And then we're going to ride off into the sunset at the end, preferably with our lover. That's the way it worked. So I had the Dragonborn monk, Evocation Wizard Gale, Life Cleric Shadowheart, and Berserker Barbarian Karlach. Dragonborn, generally speaking, I think is kind of a shit race. The passives aren't that good. I think I could have had a lot more fun and had a stronger. I think could have had just as much fun and had a stronger character with a half orc. They're just as funny and kind of goofy looking, but they have some really, really good passives. So try that out if you want to go with the monk. I played the Shadow Monk for probably the first 2/3, 3/4 of the game, and then switched over to the Way of the Open Hand, which is more the classic Kung Fu. After I fought a battle against 4 of the Open Hand monks, I was like, these guys are insane. Absolutely insane. So the Shadow Monk, you have to pay attention to like light and shadow, and it's not a game necessarily where we always know where the battles are going to start. So being able to set stuff up with stealth, it didn't really feel like the right play style. I think it was a little bit weak. It has its advantages, but what you want to do is, hi, how you doing? Okay, where was I? So I switched over to the Open Hand Monk. That was incredible. I think part of that might be that monk is more of a late game class, but really once I got to like level 10, 11, 12, this thing took off. It became a monster. I felt like about 2/3 of the game, Karlach was just running the whole thing. Absolute beast. And Gale the Wizard was basically like a boss specialist. And Shadowheart is just like a glue. She's like she's the glue. She's so dependable. She never dies. She's really, really helpful. So it was a really great party. I'm already looking forward to the way that I could play the game a second time, be more of like a bastard, try out some new stuff, try out some other companion characters, and get a really different ending. Experiment with all the tadpoles and everything. I did a clean run, no parasites, to the best degree that I could. So yeah, play the game, figure out your character's like aesthetic or philosophy, and then play the game accordingly. Take the game director's advice and let the dice rolls like be what they are. Don't like try to be like, oh, I want to win every single one of them, because it's not going to work. Something I found as well is it can be a little frustrating playing a main character or having the person who initiates most battles not really being good at charisma, because there's just so many times in the game where 2 of your 3 options or 3 of your 4 options are all things with a charisma check. There's different ways of wording a charisma check, and so it can be pretty frustrating sometimes if you only focus on battle and combat for the person who's going to be the face of your party. And that could be fine because the battle is so fun in this game. I think this company with DOS 2 and this game, I love the battle system. I think it's one of the best and most complex systems for a tactical strategy game ever. I do find, generally speaking, that both games are sort of a bit the same and that they have this great setup, but it all just kind of devolves into chaos. I played on Tactician. I think with how many classes and subclasses there are in the game, I think the balance is a little off, honestly. It might be partially subject to the fact that I tried to put together a pretty good party, and I did such a comprehensive run that I was probably maybe a little bit over leveled. But I found past Act 1 is very non-linear, and probably the most frustrating for, oh, where should I go? Should I go here? No, this guy's level 5, I'm level 3. Now I'm going over here, and now I'm level 4, and these guys are level 2, so it's an easy fight. So the experience curve for Act 1, because it's so open, could be frustrating. And then I found by the beginning of Act 3, there's 3 acts, I was about level 9, I believe, and then a really good chunk of Act 3, I was level 12. And the battle is just not difficult. It did not feel like... Basically, you have a lot of room to kind of play around in this game. I don't think you need to, like, totally have the perfect team. And if you want to, but frankly, I was a little disappointed with how easy a lot of Act 3 was. On Tactician, I would say conservatively, the bosses could have twice as much health as they have if you actually wanted to make it difficult. The Barbarian and the Monk, the Wizard, like, you dust these dudes so quickly that you have these huge hype fights. And some of them have a little bit of a gimmick you can figure out, like the Raphael fight, or some of them are just like, you can just basically brute force. So I would like it if they maybe had some optional secret bosses or something to really test your mettle. Or they instituted some better level scaling into how the combat is. I don't believe that they have. But there's people who are like level 12 with 180 HP. But you have people attacking like 3-4 times per turn. You're doing that, it doesn't seem well set up for a real challenge and these long fights. In my opinion, the best fights and most challenging fights in the game were a very early Knoll boss, Ketheric Thorm Part 2 at the end of Act 2 is terrific, and then the gold-plated Toll House Woman, that was a really good one as well. And a lot of the ones in Act 3 I felt were a little bit too easy, and it just could have been a little crazier, for sure. So I think that this is a game where it's hard to underestimate just how much depth and complexity there is here. It can be exhausting. For me, the end of Act 1 through most of Act 2, another place to explore, another place to look through, I was like, I'm exhausted. How am I supposed to do this? But it's because of the comprehensive way to play. So just kind of wander around. If you want to loot, maybe just, when you press left alt, it'll show all the like actionable items you can loot from. But you can also click every box. They're one of these games with an insane level of detail. You can click every wardrobe, every cupboard, every box. You can do all that stuff, but I would not. You're not going to miss out on much loot, and you're going to miss out on a lot of time if you do that. So maybe just whatever shows up when you press left alt, that'll get you your chest. That'll get you most stuff. You'll miss almost nothing in the game. I wouldn't really worry about that. But just appreciate the depth of it without losing yourself in it. Try some different runs. Like, there's 3 different levels at 4, 8, and 12 where you get these things called feats, which are super, super, super powerful traits or enhancements to your character. But maybe consider, instead of getting the one that's +2 dexterity to change your dexterity from 16 to 18 or something, maybe consider becoming like a musician. And so if you have to go AFK, or if I have to go offline for a bit or let my cat out or something like that, my guy can sit down there and play the flute or something. The game is not like going to kill you with difficulty. So do something like that. It's fun and kind of like enjoy the immersion of it a little bit. My quibbles are as follows. I don't think you necessarily need to play this game now. I think you could wait for a sale on this one. My reasons are, I do think the balance difficulty is off. I think Act 3, particularly the lower city, which is near the end of Act 3, is still kind of a mess, honestly. Like, it's very questionable. You can have totally different experiences considering which order and sequence you go through everything. If you're being very, very thorough, sometimes things that are huge, dramatic, consequential parts of the story, like there's a guy named Enver Gortash, who's arguably like the most critical villain, it seems like, in the story, outside of like your final boss fight. And when I fight this guy, there's no cinematic, there's no transformation, there's no big epic moment, there's no anything really when I fought him. It seemed like such a letdown. The counting house, which is the great bank heist, for me was very underwhelming. There's a place called Lady Janat's estate that was an absolute shit show. It was such a mess. There's a number of places. Some of this is my fault, not discovering the guild hall where the thieves guild is before the bank fight, before the bank heist, etc. But there's a lot of parts of Act 3 where there's so many circumstances in which the sequence of events that you go through can change, that a lot of them felt like, what is this? Like, is this the best that I'm going to get? Like, this is this person's penultimate quest, and what do I get from it? It just felt like there is some sequencing and sort of decision tree issue still with Act 3. I think the voice acting is incredible. The companion characters are incredible. Shout out specifically to Minsk. I never really know much about D&D before this game. Like, I've played a billion RPGs and read a billion fantasy novels, and you're obviously aware of Dungeons & Dragons, but like never really got into it much, like the mechanics and those sort of devices. And I've heard of Critical Role, etc., but the way they write that character and the way he voice acts him is a real cut above. It's so vibrant, really good. It's really fun to watch him do stuff. It's a shame you don't get him for longer. But it's really funny, all the scenes he has with it. I think the music is fine. There are some really great motifs and like theme songs, the ones that you see repetitions and variation of through the course of the game. There are a number of moments for a game that's this incredible in scope and so grand and epic, where you're like, I think the music is selling the short a little bit, but I do love that it's got kind of like a bard minstrel song and single instrument live music feel. A lot of those are good. It does feel like sometimes it's kind of selling you short a little bit, but there are some really great set piece songs. The music does help with some parts of this game that, yes, it's a tactical RPG, yes, it's a huge epic story. I love how you have the sci-fi framing of it so that it's not just like prancing through the woods with a fairy sword type game. There's a real sort of mainstream contemporary appeal to that. But it's not always about that. It's about those little moments where you're standing over a druid's grove and some woman's playing a lute and she's singing a song and the song washes over everything. It's moments like that that really are tender and feel like a real world. And those are really special. Little interactions between mom and her son. Talk to every cat if you can. These are all game developers. So the dogs are kind of funny, but if you use the potion of animal speaking or have the right classes, talk to the cats. They get what the cats are like. There's a lot of funny animals for sure. Shout out to the owlbear cub making a late game cameo. I did this whole thing accidentally in vertical video before by holding the phone the wrong direction. So I'm kind of trying to do a cut down version of that. What else am I missing? My ending was to kind of ride off into the sunset with my lover Karlach, but Shadowheart changing from like a cleric of Shar and switching factions and like the aesthetic change that goes with that is really cool. Another quibble was, this feels like there's head, cloak, chest, gloves, feet, necklace, double ring. So 8 different slots plus weapon. It felt like there were some periods where you go really long periods without upgrades. I kept the same purple halberd on the barbarian forever. The monk especially, because they need basically monk specific gear. By the end of the game he was a beast and his gear was perfect. But there's a long period in the game where you're like, like, you go a long time without upgrades, it feels like. Maybe if you use the shops and make sure you buy everything you can get through that. They give you more than enough money, especially if you're doing a lot of exploration. The things that you've done inform the things that currently happen. I still think some of that might need some work. Some of the endings, I think they've talked about this a bit in patches, but some of the endings involving the companion characters, they're not quite right. Like, Shadowheart was in my party the entire game. She was the first person I picked up. We did everything. She accomplished everything story-wise she needed to. She does not even show up in the ending. Literally does not even appear on screen. Whereas a lot of people who I picked up early on not knowing any better and just never used, were like level 2, get more get more attention to the ending than she did. I would say if you have a sense of what companions you're going to use, just don't pick up the other ones. You could play the game, especially if you're playing like a full comprehensive run, where you could probably use 5 or 6 different characters in the game. I'll get them all to full level and have some fun kind of switching around. If you do so, pay attention to who your main character is, because they'll have to fit in with a lot of different people. But if you are going to just stick with 4, like 3 characters plus your main character the whole game, I would just not even pick up the other people, because it'll kind of give you some unavoidable spoilers for some other playthroughs. Like, I want to use Will and Asterion in a second run, but now I know like a third or a half of their story, generally speaking, and get this shallow opinion of them, when I'd rather just not take them in at all, and so then be able to use them next time in a totally different way and get a new fresh perspective. I think that's about it. Play the game if you want to have a deep dive on it. This is not a game you really want to mess with it for a couple hours. This is like a lifetime toy, you know what I mean? This is something that we're really, really lucky to get. That you're not going to get a game like this very often. So if it's your kind of thing and you have the patience for it, we may never do better than this. We may very rarely get a game of this kind of detail and this kind of love and care. So appreciate it. And follow me at twitch.tv/tb_honest. Next is Starfield, Cyberpunk after that. Another Baldur's Gate 3 run this winter once I get over my looting fatigue, and then onward and upward.